Continue to look at some of the early moves by Governor Ron DeSantis. Joining me once again is State Senator Gary Farmer, a Democrat from Broward. So let's pick up on the conversation. Let's talk about one of the moves that had a lot of effects here in South Florida was the removal of Scott Israel. What was your opinion of the removal of the sheriff?
Well, you know, so many people right now, particularly in Broward County and the Parkland community, are looking for someone to blame. And in hindsight, things always appear clearer, and you can always say woulda, coulda, shoulda. But the unfortunate part to me is that as the focus had shifted towards who can we blame, we've lost focus of the most salient point here, which is the #1 common denominator for every mass shooting that has ever occurred in Florida and the United States, and that's the weaponry itself. And so by focusing on blaming the sheriff and saying in hindsight he could have done this or could have done that, we lose focus on things that we absolutely can and should take care of, both as a governor and as a legislative body, which is banning assault weapons, banning high-capacity magazines, doing away with the background check loopholes.
Do any of those things that you just, those three items, banning assault weapons, high-capacity magazines, closing background check loopholes, do any of those items have a chance of passing in this legislative session?
I think we have a harder road to hoe with regard to assault weapons, but I think magazines, and I especially believe that background check, closing those loopholes, has a chance of happening.
How strong an effort is the NRA going to have to repeal some of the things that were passed a year ago, namely the age limit on raising the age limit to purchase a weapon from 18 to 21? Is that in danger of being rolled back to 18?
I would hope not. I think we would look as though we did nothing more than just kick the can down the road to get away from the emotion of the moment last year in undoing something that clearly, not only shouldn't we undo that, but that age limit restriction to 21 is, I don't want to say meaningless, but it's got a huge gaping loophole in that it doesn't apply to a transfer of an assault weapon.
So if my father buys a gun, he can hand it to me?
He can hand it to a 16-year-old.
So I just want to go back. I know that you wanted to move past the Scott Israel thing. Do you disagree with the governor's decision to remove the sheriff?
I don't know that it rises to the level, the sheriff's performance rises to the level of malfeasance or dereliction of duty. I was not on the Stoneman Douglas Commission. I have not studied their report, so I don't know all the facts. But here's what I do know, Jim. That commission that did delve into this more deeply than anyone has, they did not recommend that the sheriff be removed.
I think they also
that's
felt,
important.
But I think they felt that within their charter, that really wasn't something they should comment on. They should rather give recommendations to changes of policy and things that the legislature can enact. I just want to make this last point about Scott Israel, because I do think it's relevant to some extent. I think Scott Israel, at the end of the day, was his own worst enemy. I think there was a level of arrogance that he displayed and a refusal to accept responsibility for some of the things that were in his control. I think that's what got him into trouble as much as anything. Do you disagree?
I do not disagree.
We talked about the MSD Commission. They've come through with a lengthy report. I'm sure you're still digesting it, looking at the recommendations. Are you hardened? Do you think that the legislature will take some of those recommendations in terms of providing for greater security seriously? And among those recommendations, among a number of board members, is to make guns more readily available for certain school personnel to arm themselves on campuses. Do you think that's likely to happen?
I sure hope not. And that was the most glaring, I think, and unfortunate conclusion by the commission from the report. It is my understanding that they did not take any testimony or really gather any evidence as to the arming of teachers. And one thing that I have heard loudly and clearly and overwhelmingly in my conversations within my district, around the state and around our Broward County, is that a vast majority of people do not want to arm teachers. There is a huge difference between having highly trained and skilled law enforcement officers with a gun on a school campus and with having a teacher with a gun on campus. And the stories around the country, numerous stories, students finding the teacher's gun, the gun accidentally going off. There is a parade of horribles that could happen. And we have violence in our inner cities and elsewhere, and shootings that don't get attention. And we need to reduce the proliferation of guns, not expand it.
I want to sort of form a bridge between this segment and the segment that comes next. We're going to be talking about with another guest affordable housing. I know one of the issues, though, with the state on affordable housing is the state has a trust fund called the Sadowski Fund, which has been around for 25 years, that creates a pot of money from dock stamps and other things, taxes, that is for affordable housing. But legislators often end up raiding it to cover for shortfalls in the budgeting process in the state. What can be done to make sure that money dedicated for affordable housing goes to affordable housing and doesn't go to other uses?
I don't think we often rated, Jim. I think we've rated it every year that it's been in existence. I was encouraged last year. Our initial Senate budget proposal did not raid the Sadowski Fund for the first time ever. Eventually, because of budgetary shortfalls and because of push from the House, we had to concede, and it got raided again.
Is this a crisis, affordable housing in our community?
Absolutely. I was just about to say, for our Democratic caucus in the Florida Senate, it is one of our top priorities. Broward County alone has lost over $1 million just in the rating of the funds that have occurred. This money is intended for a purpose that is crying out for relief. Floridians are working 2-3 jobs just to have somewhere to live. It is not right, and we need to build for a better state for all Floridians.
All right.
So Sadowski, Medicaid expansion, funding public education at the level we need to fund it, these are things we need to do, and while we're encouraged by the early actions of the governor, we hope he acts on things like affordable housing and others. Senator
Farmer, I'm sure we'll have you back and talk more as the session gets closer, but we've teed up nicely the next segment on affordable housing. I thank you very much for your time. And when we come back, the affordable housing crisis, we'll dig a little deeper into it.